Hello and welcome back to my freshly updated, new and improved Ultimate Flower Guide. Before we get into things, I just want to say thank you to everybody who watched the old one and gave it so much love. I really appreciate it. I put so much work into that and this one as well, but it's been a long time since I made that old video, so we do need an updated version. I'm going to tell you everything, and I do literally mean everything, you need to know about flowers in Hello Kitty Island Adventure, from literally the most basic things, from like where to find a plain seed, to the more complex things, like getting secondary transfers on patterned event flowers, for example. Anything and everything you'd want to know will be in this video. If you are looking for something specific, make sure to check the timestamps in the description, but I will warn you though that the way that I am structuring this video is that all of the information will build on itself. So once we go over one section, that next section will assume that you already know everything about the previous section. This also makes it so some things aren't like entirely covered in one part, because you need some more information to understand it as a whole. I will be posting little cheat sheet infographics with some of the graphics from this video. You will be able to download high quality images of them for free on my Ko-fi, which I will also link in the description. And we have to remember that since Hello Kitty Island Adventure is always changing and evolving with their updates, if anything gets completely out of date, please check the pinned comments and the description. Okay, I've got a lot of information to go over. This is going to be a super dense video, so let's finally get into it. Gardening in Hello Kitty Island Adventure might seem a little overwhelming at first, but once you get a hang of it, it makes a lot of sense and is quite intuitive actually. In the game, it isn't required to access the main storyline, and there are only a handful of quests that actually involve flower breeding, such as the Bow for Besties quest where you need a few red flowers, which I will go over in this video as well. Once you finish these quests that involve flowers, you can really stop gardening forever. In this video, I'm going to be telling you how to get every color of every flower in every pattern. Also, before we really dive into things, I want to give a huge shout out and thank you to the Hello Kitty Island Adventure Wikipedia editors, because without their work, the Hello Kitty Island Adventure community would not know nearly as much about flowers. I'd also like to thank V and the other collaborators who worked on the Hello Kitty Island Adventure flower generator. If you haven't seen this resource, it's honestly amazing. I will link that in the description too. You'll see later on, but that's where I get all of the data for the super nitty-gritty information, like the spawning percentages of flowers and such. I'd also like to thank the Discord community in general, because without everyone, we would not have been able to figure out as much as we know about flowers now than we did during even my previous version of this video. So yeah, thank you to everybody in this community, and let's jump into everything you need to know about flowers. So to start your entire flower journey, you first have to find the Merry Meadow itself. To unlock the Merry Meadow, you'll need to complete the Curious Caverns quest. Now, there are a few prerequisites before this quest is unlocked. First, you'll need to have reached friendship level 11 with My Melody. This is essential to unlock the Revive the Oasis quest. Second, friendship level 4 with Pom Pom Pudding is needed for the Deserted Boat quest. And finally, make sure you've completed the Parched quest with Keropi. These will all allow you to unlock the Curious Caverns quest, the reset after you finish the Revive the Oasis quest. And once you get to the Merry Meadows, I strongly suggest that you collect as many pollen puffs as you can. I'm talking like 5,000 pollen puffs. Wormtails aren't bad either. I'll tell you why later, but just trust me on this. Please collect as many as you can. I wish I knew that when I first found the Merry Meadows. Okay, now on to the most basic part on starting your flower journey. How do you find seeds? Plain seeds will be found all over the ground in the Merry Meadow. You can pick these up, and just like any other resource, they will be added to your inventory. Then you'll want to walk up to those circular plots you see around. Once you go there, go ahead and press the little seedling icon on the bottom right corner, or the button or key associated with it depending on the platform you're playing on, and a menu will pop up with all of the seeds you can plant. Choose one, and it'll be planted in that specific plot you selected before. One of my biggest tips for this is leave plenty of space around these planted seeds, since depending on how long it takes for you to level up with Wish Me Mel to friendship level 10, you may not be able to move these for a hot minute. Wish Me Mel is notorious for being difficult to level up quickly, so by leaving spaces in between your seeds planted, you may actually end up getting them to breed with each other. The chances are super low, but not zero. So one of the best things that they added to this game is that you can filter through your inventory. So you can pick if you want just a plain seed or if you want a specific type of flower. And then you can even decide if you want to see seed packets or seedlings. And of course, you can filter by the color and whether or not it has a pattern and which pattern it is. It's honestly so helpful for when you are planting flowers. The inventory itself is divided in 3 sections. The first one, it has seedlings and seed packets. The second part of the menu just has the seed packets. And then the last part has only the seedlings. So even though you can use filters, it already is very organized. You could choose if it's sorted by the default, by their rarity, or even by the quantity. Let's talk about what happens when you plant a plain seed in the Merry Meadow. You may notice that only one type of flower will grow. There are 4 possible options. It could be a Tulia, Penstemum, Dandelily, or Bellbutton. This specific flower that you get is unique to your island. It's what we call your island's wildflower or native flower. If you are familiar with Animal Crossing, think of this like having pears or maybe apples native to your island. But instead of fruit, it will be one of these 4 flowers. In my mind, I categorize the types of flowers into 3 different main groups. First, we have Merry Meadows flowers. These are sort of like the default or starter flowers in a way. Like I said, one of these is your island's wildflower. I'll tell you how to get the other 3 in a minute, but next we have the regional flowers. These are unique to other biomes in the game. When you plant a plain seed in each biome, a different native flower will grow. You won't have plots in all of the other biomes unlocked, but I will show you how to do that in the video as well. But then under the regional flowers, I do have a subsection of extremophile flowers. These are resilient and thrive in the most challenging conditions on the island, but I still consider them to be regional or biome flowers. And last but not least, event flowers. They appear during special events and only grow during their specific event. They all have awesome patterns, but let's get into that later too. All flowers, regardless of the type, follow the same basic mechanics, but each type has something special to it. By the time you finish watching this video, you're going to know all of the differences. Let's reel it back in and go back to the Merry Meadows flowers for a second. So, since one of these is your island's wildflower, how do you get the other 3? It is super simple. You have to open mystery seed capsules. They are a lot like the character boxes you can open from your inventory. These just contain seed packets in them. Opening these will randomly give you seed packets for any of the 4 of the Merry Meadows flowers. You may or may not get all of the default colors, so be patient and keep trying. You will eventually get them all. You can get mystery seed capsules from leveling up your friendship with Wish Me Mel or by playing the Crane Craze minigame. This unlocks a little later in your Merry Meadows journey once you complete the Temple Ruins puzzles, but to do this you will need at least friendship level 12 with Wish Me Mel to be able to reach that area of the Merry Meadow. Or if you have friends who play the game, they can actually gift you the plucked flower that you can then put into the seed dispenser. That unlocks at level 6 with Wish Me Mel. Like the seed dispenser though, there are many tools that you can unlock to improve your gardening experience in the game. I'm going to tell you how to unlock each one and some pro tips on how to use them to work smarter and not harder in your gardening journey. First up, the most basic item is the watering can. Having this is super important because watering your flowers literally cuts the time it takes for them to grow in half. Since you can get to the Merry Meadow before unlocking the watering can, make sure you get to friendship level 14 with My Melody. You will unlock the watering can after you finish the quest Flower Power. Did you know that you can water an entire patch of flowers by holding down the watering can or the corresponding button or key until the meter fills up? I'll bring it up again in this video, but it also works for plucking flowers, watering, fertilizing, and troweling. This makes gardening a breeze. But if watering patch by patch isn't efficient enough for you, you can always use a sprinkler hat. This will unlock after you get the seed dispenser. Place this hat on any null and you can ask them to water all of the flowers in the specific region that they are in. But remember, you actually need to ask them every day. Just walk up to the null and select water all of the flowers. So for example, if they are in the Seaside Resort, the null will only water the flowers that are in the Seaside Resort. And a note, if it rains in-game in any specific biome, all of your flowers will get watered as well. The exception is if your flowers are already bloomed before the rain occurs, because then you can still pluck them and then water them once again. Now let's get on to something that will be necessary in your journey to breed flowers, get cool colors, and make rare patterns. So once you reach Friendship Level 6 with Wish Me Mel, you will unlock the quest that will unlock the Seed Dispenser. This turns plucked flowers into seed packets. Then, once you reach Friendship Level 8 with Wish Me Mel, you will get the quest to unlock the Composter. This is essential too, because it gets you Fertilizer, which we will talk about more in a second. Put plucked flowers into the seed dispenser to get seed packets for those flowers. For example, if I put 1 green Penstemum in the seed dispenser, I will get 1 green Penstemum seed packet back. So you will always get the same color and amount that you put in, but back in a seed packet. I'm not going to go super into this. Wish Me Mel's companion ability, the Master Gardener ability, allows you a chance for bonus seed packets. So you might either have a 20% or 50% chance to be getting extras. So if you are going to be using the seed dispenser, think about bringing Wish Me Mel with you if you've got her at Friendship Level 11 or higher. But unfortunately, you can't put all plucked flowers into the seed dispenser. You can't put patterned flowers or event flowers. Even if an event flower doesn't have a pattern, you still can't turn them into seeds. This is just one of those special rules that apply specifically to event flowers, but we will get way more into depth on those later. So patterned flowers and event flowers, they cannot be turned into seed packets. But in the Composter, put plucked flowers, including patterned flowers and event flowers, seedlings, seed packets, and seeds to get Fertilizer. You can put any of these in, regardless of whether or not they are patterned from an event or etc. So that's honestly awesome because Fertilizer is a hot commodity in this game. But why is it so important? So Fertilizer increases the chances of your flower being cloned, creating new spawns nearby, crossbreeding with other flowers, or developing patterns. With Fertilizer, a flower will have a 1% chance of developing a pattern. This is super low, even with Fertilizer, so be patient and keep trying. Here's a pro tip. Keep some plucked flowers in your inventory though. Don't turn them all into seeds or Fertilizer because you will need these eventually for a quest or just to make candles and decorate. I would suggest you to especially keep any red plucked flowers. If you at least have 1 seed packet of each color, you should be fine, because you can always clone more and grow more. Did you know that you can fertilize an entire patch of flowers by holding down the Fertilizer until the meter fills up? Well, you know now. Fertilized flowers also have an increased chance of spawning a new flower in a nearby plot. For example, on any given day, at reset, an unfertilized flower only has a 1% chance of spawning a new flower in a nearby empty plot, whereas a fertilized flower bumps that up from 1% all the way up to 10%. So make sure to fertilize your flowers every day to either get them to turn patterned or to help create new spawns if you are trying to breed them. A seedling that you just planted can't be fertilized. It still counts as fertilized and will automatically have that extra 10% chance for new spawns added. A common technique that some players use is to trowel all of your flowers every day to get this automatic 10% boost. This will take a lot of time if you are troweling everything and replanting every day. So if you don't have the time, fertilizing can be much more efficient. But if you are running low on fertilizer, digging up and replanting every day can also be worth it. But more on planting strategies later in the video, so stay tuned. And like I said earlier, with fertilizer, there is a 1% chance that a fertilized flower can develop a pattern. This is a super low rate, so you need to be patient and keep on fertilizing. But from newly planted seeds to flowers that have already bloomed, they can all develop their default pattern by simply fertilizing them. The plant itself will always have the pattern, and it will always have it, no matter if you dig it up and replant it. I will talk more about patterns later in the video. But a question I get a lot is, does it matter if you water first or fertilize first? Well, my answer to this is yes and no. I would recommend watering first if you would like to save fertilizer, since if you water a plant, it may bloom. And once you pluck a bloom, you will have to fertilize it once again. So instead of wasting 2 fertilizers on one plant, you can just use one after you water and pluck the flower. So I guess the answer is water first, then fertilize. But it generally doesn't matter that much if you've got thousands of fertilizer. I've been talking a lot about troweling up flowers or digging up flowers. So how do you actually do that? With the trowel. The trowel is that little shovel that allows you to dig up your flowers. This is honestly one of the most useful tools in the game. The quest to get the trowel unlocks at friendship level 10 with Wish Me Mel. With the trowel, you can actually dig up an entire patch of flowers by holding down the trowel or corresponding button until the meter fills up, just like fertilizing or watering or plucking. But yeah, depending on the stage of growth of the flower that you trowel, you may get something different in your inventory when you dig it up. There are 5 stages of growth for every single flower. There is seed, sprout, grown, bud, and bloom. When you trowel up a flower at the seed or sprout stage, you will just get a seed packet of that flower into your inventory. If you are attempting to dig up an event flower at these stages, a warning will pop up asking you if you are sure to trowel it, since event flowers cannot become seed packets. So digging up an event flower at these stages will just get rid of it forever. But then at the grown or bud stage, you will dig up a seedling. At the bloom stage, if you dig it up, you will get both the seedling and the plucked flower into your inventory. Each stage of growth can last 1 to 2 days. If you don't pluck your flowers, they will remain bloomed until you do pluck them. So keep in mind, if you are trying to get more flowers or to breed them, make sure to always pluck them and water them so they can continue to regrow. If you don't water your flowers every day, it will take 7 days in total to go from a seed to fully bloomed. That's why I said earlier that watering your flowers every day can cut this time in half. This is the normal progression of the life of a flower. It takes 7 days to bloom. You have day 1 as the seed, day 2 and 3 as sprout 1 and 2, day 4 as grown, day 5 and 6 as bud 1, bud 2, and then day 7 it blooms. But if you water the plant every day, it will bloom in only 4 days. On the first day of planting a seed, you can water it. This will bring it to the first sprout stage. Then on day 2 at reset, it will automatically be at sprout 2. And once you water it, it will be grown. Then on day 3, automatically at reset, it will become bud 1. And when you water it, it will be bud 2. So then on day 4 at reset, it will automatically be nice and bloomed. Let's continue on with this though, because the pattern changes just like a little bit once it blooms. So once you pluck it, the flower will go back to the grown stage. If you didn't water it yet today, you can water it now after plucking, and it will bring you all the way to the first bud stage. Then at reset on day 5, it will start out as bud 2, and by watering it, you will have a bloom again already. So then once you pluck it, since you watered before the bloom, you can't water it again today. So then on day 6, it will become the first bud at reset, and watering it will make it the second bud. And then on the 7th day, it will be bloomed at reset. So you can repeat this pattern now as long as you water every day and pluck the blooms. But isn't that honestly amazing? How in 7 days without water, your flower will only bloom once. But with watering every day, it will bloom 3 times. You don't need to worry about learning and memorizing all of the stages of growth. It is just handy to be aware of exactly how much watering your flowers does benefit you. Now that we know these super basics of how flowers work to be planted, troweled, watered, and fertilized, let's get into the basics of flower breeding. Number 1, plant 2 compatible flowers near each other, with a maximum of 1 space between them. They always need to be touching at least 1 space in common or touching each other. Then, number 2, you need to leave empty plots for new flowers to grow, since new colors or pattern transfers only happen in new spawns. So you need space for them to grow. Number 3, water and fertilize every day. Number 4, always pluck bloomed flowers and trowel unwanted new spawns. These are just the absolute basic things to remember. If this is confusing, we're going to break this down so much further you don't even know. So let's just keep going, right? This is gonna be a crazy ride. But before we dive into the super crazy, I want to do a little overview of the 4 main types of flower breeding. There's color mixing, color transfers, pattern transfers, and secondary transfers. Does this sound like English to you still? Well, if it doesn't, I'll explain. Color mixing is essentially when you want to mix 2 colors of the same species or type of flower. So just like it sounds, yellow plus blue can help you get a green. But they all have to be the same type, like in this example, they're all bellbuttons. It's like you can't mix oil and water. You can only mix the same type of flower. Then you could do a color transfer. This is where you end up using 2 different types of flowers to transfer a color from one species to another species using patterned flowers. Then there are pattern transfers. Since some flowers have different default patterns, you can use a similar technique to the color transfers, but just using the same colored flower and different species and different types to transfer a pattern from one type to another type. They all just have to be the same color though, but I'm gonna get way more into these if you're confused right now. We're just doing like a very surface overview. But yeah, last but not least, secondary transfers. This is just like mixing 2 patterned flowers of the same type to get both of their primary colors to be on the flower. So let's crack open the egg that is color mixing and dive right in. Color mixing is the simplest way to breed flowers. Flowers of the same species and types can mix colors, but not all colors can mix together. There are 3 basic requirements for 2 flowers to be able to mix the colors. 1, they must be the same species or type. 2, they need to be solid colors only. They must not have any pattern, so no ombres allowed here. Number 3, the colors themselves are compatible to be mixed. So how do you know if 2 colors are compatible to be mixed? That's where we bring in my good friend, the Master Palette. This is a color palette created by the developers of the game to help make colors of flowers, clothing, furniture, and everything more cohesive in the game. These are the names of the colors of the flowers that we use in the game, so be careful when talking about the colors so you don't get confused. Like, purple doesn't exist. Nah, here it's violet. And be careful with warm pink, pink, cool pink, and hot pink. You know? But yeah, at the time of making this video, every flower has 27 colors. We are expecting black and gray flowers to come to the game, but right now, I have been told that they will not be mixable with other colors. This can obviously change in the future, since it is a live service game, but of course, check the comments or description if anything giant has changed. But besides white, which we do have, we can divide the colors into 2 different categories. We have the base colors. You can also call these brights, but the majority of people call them base colors though. Then we have the tint colors. These may also be referred to as pastels, but tint is also the more common name. To get the tints, you need to mix any of the base colors with white to get its corresponding tint color. Here is a diagram of all of the possible mixing combinations. So as you can see, a lot of these are very intuitive, like red and yellow make orange, yellow and blue make green, Red and blue make violet, but then there's a couple more like red and orange make coral, yellow and green make lime, green and sky make teal, blue and violet make indigo, and then violet and hot pink make magenta. But wait a minute, how do you mix the 6 remaining colors? You can't. Not every color can be mixed from 2 other colors. These are the 6 unmixable colors. To get these, if they are not already a default color of the flower, you need to do a color transfer from a different type of flower. I'll teach you how to do those too, so don't worry. But first off, I want to talk about default colors. I've brought this up a lot so far, and you may be scratching your head being like, girl, what is she talking about? Default colors, huh? But super simple. Every type of flower may have 1 to 4 default colors. These are the colors that you could get randomly from either planting seeds, or if they are an event flower, these are the colors that can randomly spawn around the island. For your native flowers, if you plant a plain seed in the Meadow, you will randomly get one of their default colors. For regional flowers, like Biome flowers, if you plant a plain seed in each region, you will randomly get one of their default colors for that specific regional biome flower. For event flowers, these flowers will randomly spawn their default colors in empty plots in whichever regions are specified for that particular event. And kind of like I mentioned before, to get all of the default colors for the Meadows flowers, just keep opening up mystery seed capsules or trading with a friend online. But for the moment, let's talk about the default colors of all of the Meadows flowers. For Bellbuttons, its default colors are yellow, white, and blue. For Dandelilys, the default colors are red, yellow, and white. For Penstemums, they are sky, green, and white. And then last but not least, for Tulia, they are red, yellow, and violet. Lucky for us, the majority of these are part of the 6 colors that cannot be mixed, so it makes things a lot easier for us in the long run. But I made these little cheat sheets on how to mix just the default colors from the Meadows flowers. Once you get a good understanding of these, it will totally help you in the future when you get more types of flowers and start doing color transfers to try and get all 27 of each type. You can get 6 additional colors from just these 3 default colors simply by mixing the colors. So this is like my little cheat sheet. I do show you what the flower looks like, what the seed packet looks like. The bottom left, you can see the default pattern is ombre, which we don't need to be concerned about quite yet. And then you need to transfer from other types of flowers, red, hot pink, and sky. This is more for like your future reference, because we don't know how to do those yet if you're watching in order of the video. This is definitely something for you to go back and look at when you are actually, out in the field planting your flowers, But let's just go on to the Dandelilies. You can make 6 additional colors as well, just from these 3 defaults, like cream, warm pink, orange, peach, coral, and blush. And for the Penstemums, you can only make 4 new colors, like cloud, mint, teal, and seafoam. Then for the Tulias, unfortunately, you can only make 2. So you are going to have to do a lot of color transfers from different types of flowers to be able to mix more. Before we get onto color transfers, let's do a little review on how exactly to lay out your flowers when you are attempting to mix the colors. We need to follow this little checklist of things to make sure that everything will work. So here in this example, my goal is to get a green Bellbutton. And let's just go down my checklist. So we need both flowers that are the same type. Okay, yes, I have a yellow and a blue Bellbutton. They're both Bellbuttons, so that's perfect. Next, solid colors with no patterns. Yes, they are. They are plain yellow and plain blue. If they had a pattern, there would be another little box under the color in the inventory. And next up, the colors themselves are compatible to be mixed. If I go back and look at my master mixing palette, yes, we know yellow and blue are able to be mixed. And next up, each flower is either touching the other flower or touching a plot in common. Yes, they're touching each other. And last, there are empty plots around for your desired flower to spawn in. Yes, so this is perfect. And now in these highlighted zones, these are spots where we might get that green Bellbutton. But keep in mind, you may just get a clone of the blue or a clone of the yellow. These are the exact percentages of the likelihood of each color spawning here if a flower is to spawn. So as you can see, it is more likely for a blue or yellow Bellbutton to appear than actually for a green one. So just keep trying and be patient. 30% isn't bad, and with fertilizing, it'll definitely help as well. Here is another configuration. The flowers you want to mix together don't need to be touching each other, they just need to be touching a common space. So in this example, there are only 3 plots where they can have a possible green Bellbutton to spawn in. Here are the exact percentages, and you can kind of see why I do prefer the first way versus this way, especially if you're working in a small flower patch. But let's look at the same thing here but diagonal. They only share 1 plot with each other, so it isn't as efficient as vertically or horizontally being spaced apart, but you'll still have, 1 zone where you might get one. But if you do want to put them diagonal, I would say them touching each other is better than them just like sharing one space, because even here, you're getting 2 opportunities for that green Bellbutton instead of just 1. Now let's imagine, this is how I plant them. And then hypothetically, on the next day, I get all of these blues and yellows to spawn in. What should I do? Should I keep them here? No, you shouldn't. You need to dig them up. You do not need these. You would much rather have the open space for the possibility of a green Bellbutton to spawn in the next day. So always pluck bloomed flowers and trowel unwanted new spawns. Now that you should be a master of color mixing, let's crank up the difficulty and talk about these unmixable colors once again. This is when color transfers come into play. Color transfers happen when you combine a patterned flower of the color you want to transfer with a different type of flower of any color to transfer the color to. In my example, I have a hot pink and white ombre hibiscus and a solid yellow Bellbutton. And there is a chance that you can get a hot pink Bellbutton to spawn when you place the 2 flowers nearby. So essentially, what color do you want to transfer? Get that in a pattern. It can be any pattern. And then which type of flower do you want to have that color? You could place that in any color. Then you might get that patterned color on that other flower as a new spawn. I talked about it a little bit earlier, but you get patterned flowers by watering a solid flower and fertilizing it. There is only a 1% chance of that flower developing a pattern, so you need to be patient. And once that flower develops a pattern, the plant itself will always have that pattern, even if you pluck it, trowel it, and replant it. So when a specific plant develops a pattern, it doesn't do like a new spawn or anything. Any flower can develop a pattern, you just need to fertilize it. But then when we get like a new color of a flower, that will always be a new spawn. So a flower itself that gets a pattern will not be a new spawn. But a flower that gets a new color or later on a new pattern transfer, those will all be new spawns. Does that make sense? If not, I'll go more into it, don't worry. But yeah, the default pattern for most flowers is the ombre. The exceptions for this are event flowers or the extremophile flowers. Any patterned flower can be used to transfer colors. So here is my step-by-step on how to do a color transfer. Number 1, put the patterned flower next to a different type of flower of any color. In my example, that is the hot pink and white ombre hibiscus next to the solid yellow Bellbutton. Number 2, leave empty spaces around to allow new flowers to spawn. Number 3, water and fertilize every day to help the process. And like always, don't forget to always pluck when bloomed and trowel any unwanted new spawns. Now let's take a look at a color transfer in action. My goal here is to get a red Penstemum. So what I'm going to do is put a red and white ombre Tulia next to a sky Penstemum. This Penstemum could be literally any color, it doesn't matter. Only the patterned flower color matters. And the color you want to transfer must be the first color in the name. Since red is the first color in the name, that is the primary color and is the only one that will be transferable here. But a white and red ombre Tulia would transfer white and not red, since white is the first color in the name of the flower, making it the primary color. You could also use this red and white ombre Tulia to transfer red to any other flower, like Bellbuttons, hibiscus, etc. So I put the flowers down, kind of like I did in my previous examples for color mixing, and the highlighted spots are the possible plots where I could get a red Penstemum to spawn in. Can you guess the likelihood of it being a red Penstemum? Is it going to be higher than color mixing or lower? Remember, for color mixing, it's a 30% chance. This is slightly different than when you are just mixing 2 colors, since the odds are significantly lower to get your desired results here. There is only a 10% chance that if a flower even spawns, it might be a color transfer. This is why I always recommend trying to mix colors first instead of doing color transfers, since mixing colors would give you a 30% chance instead of only a 10% chance. So one of my biggest tips is to only do color transfers like this when completely necessary. So get those main 6 unmixables and then mix the rest, you know? Of course, to get a red Penstemum, you have to do a color transfer. But if you want to do something like orange, do a color mix between a red Penstemum and a yellow Penstemum, since the likelihood is much greater than doing an orange color transfer. Okay, that was a lot. Now that we are getting a little more complex, I do want to introduce the other types of flowers into this. So we already know everything we need to know about the Meadow flowers. Now let's move on to the regional flowers. So the regional or biome flowers are unlocked by getting Wishbemel's visitor friends as 5-star permanent residents. I have a whole video on their requirements if you need help with their cabins and such, so make sure to go check that out. Each biome has its own native flower. This means when you plant a plain seed, the regional flowers will grow. These are all of the possible regions that you can unlock flowers for. Of course, the Meadow, then Seaside Resort, Spooky Swamp, Gemstone Mountain, Mount Hothead, Rainbow Reef, Cloud Island, Icy Peak, Caldera, and the Crystal Mines. Not every flower can grow in every biome. This is what we call biome compatibility. It's whether or not a specific flower can be planted in other regions of the island. Most non-native flowers can be planted in other biomes as seed packets or seedlings. All flowers, except for the extremophile flowers, can be planted inside of the greenhouse. I will talk about the greenhouse in the middle of all of these regional flowers because it is unlocked with one of Wishbemel's friends, and I'm going to be going down the order in which you unlock them all. First off, let's start off with the first character you should get for unlocking more flowers. Lou. He will help you get the Hibiscus flower, which is native to the Seaside Resort. This unlocks with the Beach Blossoms quest when Lou is a permanent resident. The default color of the Hibiscus is hot pink. The default pattern is ombre. It is replantable in the Meadow, Spooky Swamp, Mount Hothead, and of course the greenhouse. And of course this also unlocks flower patches in the Seaside Resort. Next up is the native flower for Gemstone Mountain. This will be the Thistle. It unlocks with the Wild Mountain Time quest when Poco is a permanent resident. The default color is violet. Its default pattern is ombre, and it is replantable in the Spooky Swamp, Mount Hothead, and of course the greenhouse. This will also unlock patches all over Gemstone Mountain and the Oasis. Next up, we've got the Heavy Nettle. This unlocks with the Fiery Flowers quest when Chico is a permanent resident. It's native to Mount Hothead. The default color is orange, the default pattern is ombre, and it is replantable in Gemstone Mountain and the greenhouse. Now we've got the Ghostgleam. It is native to the Spooky Swamp. It unlocks with the Fen Flora quest when Aro is a permanent resident. The default color is white, the default pattern is ombre, and it is replantable in Gemstone Mountain, Rainbow Reef, Cloud Island, and the greenhouse. Now the next flower you can unlock is the Anemone. It unlocks with the Reef Side Riches quest when Marine is a permanent resident. This flower is native to the Rainbow Reef, and its default colors are magenta and lime. Its default pattern is ombre, and it is replantable in the Cloud Island or the greenhouse. I do have something else to note here. Once you get Marine, you should also be trying to get Lutz, so you can open up the greenhouse, because that is the next step basically. I'm finally going to talk about the greenhouse. This is an absolute game changer. The greenhouse is compatible with flowers from all biomes, except for the 3 extremophile flowers. But yeah, this opens up flower breeding to almost every type of flower, even the ones who can't be planted normally in the same biomes. You do not need to use fertilizer in the greenhouse since there is a 100% spawn rate in any plot that is touching a plant. So it ups the chance for breeding significantly. Since outside of the greenhouse, there is only ever a 10% chance that a new flower will spawn. But if you still want to try and develop patterns inside of the greenhouse, you will need to fertilize. But yeah, the best thing about the greenhouse, in my opinion, is that event flowers can breed outside of their event. You'll still need to get like at least 1 seedling from any particular event to be able to get all of the colors outside of that event. Unlocking the greenhouse is done through a quest. Once Lutz is a permanent 5-star resident, and the quest is called Grand Garden Gathering. All of the previous Wishmail visitors I've mentioned are also required to get this quest. And here's a big warning. Do you remember in the beginning of the video when I told you to save up your wormtails and pollen puffs? Well, sit down because the greenhouse is not fully upgraded right away. It will cost you an arm and a leg to unlock all of the possible plots inside. You can obviously do it little by little, but in total, to get it all fully unlocked, it will cost you 640 wormtails. Okay, not bad. 4,950 pollen puffs. Okay, could be worse. But then, last but not least, 6,000 fertilizer. Now that we've got the greenhouse unlocked, all of the following flowers require that the greenhouse be opened. So the Dreampuff is the last of the quote-unquote normal regional flowers. The Dreampuff unlocks with the quest series, Big Dreams, Big Schemes. When Roseanne is a permanent resident, it is native to Cloud Island and the default colors are Mint, Cloud, Periwinkle, and Cool Pink. The default pattern is ombre and it is only replantable in the greenhouse. But since this is the last of the normal regional flowers, this brings us to the Extremophile flowers. These are regional flowers that have 2 big differences to the regular regional flowers. They can't be planted in the greenhouse. They also have special default patterns, which I will be calling effects. They are still patterned flowers, but the effect ones are their own little subcategory of patterned flowers, I guess. But note, non-pattern plucked Extremophile flowers can still be put into this seed dispenser. Here's a little reminder again, to get patterned flowers, keep fertilizing the flower you want to have a pattern and be patient since there is only a 1% chance of it actually happening. The big reason why I want to distinguish a difference between patterns and effects is that with patterns, there is usually a primary and secondary color. For example, here I have my sky and white ombre Penstemum. But then, for a patterned flower, with an effect pattern, like this coral molten eggwort, it only has 1 color, and it looks super freaking cool. But don't worry, they still act like patterned flowers in every other way besides having 2 colors. Transferring colors works the same, transferring patterns works the same, but secondary transfers are not possible due to them only having 1 color and not 2. But yeah, let's get into the 3 Extremophile flowers now. You're going to need Nina as a permanent resident to unlock all of these flowers, and you will need the greenhouse unlocked and the Dreampuffs unlocked. So when you plant a plain seed on the Icy Peak, the native flower is a Frostfeather. The default pattern is the Frost effect, which looks super cool, and the default color is ice. Next up, after you get the Frostfeather, you can unlock Blazebulbs, which are native to the Caldera. The default pattern is Molten, which honestly looks even cooler than Frost, and the default colors are Coral, Blush, Peach, and Cream. This unlocks with the quest Dragon's Breath with Nina. And at the time of this video, this is the last regional flower. We do not currently expect more to come since we have finally completed the collection goals for flowers, but of course, with the beauty of this game, being a live service game, there is always a possibility of more in the future. For example, if we get more biomes or islands, maybe we get more flowers there too? Who knows? but just a reminder for you to check the description or pinned comments for any massive updates to the information in this video. But yeah, the Crystalia is native to the Crystal Caves. The default pattern is crystal, which is beautiful, and the default colors are teal, pistachio, and pink. It unlocks with the quest Forgotten Flower with Nina, once you do the quest to get the Blazebulbs. Wait a minute, how do you get this coral molten Penstemum if earlier I said you can't replant Blazebulbs outside of the Caldera, since it is an Extremophile flower? You can't even plant Penstemums in the Caldera. How did you do this? Or how is it even possible to get other colors of the Extremophiles too? None of the Meadow or regional flowers can be planted in the Icy Peak. So how did this one become a hot pink Frostfeather? What kind of magic is this? Well, it's not magic. There may only be a few plots per each Extremophile flower, but there are still ways to both transfer colors to them and transfer the cool Extremophile effects to other flowers. So at the time of making this video, there are only 4 flowers in the game that can also be planted in the Extremophile biomes. They are all event flowers. After this short section, I'm going to go in depth on the event flowers, but for now, all we need to know is that these 4 event flowers are needed to do cross-type breeding with the Extremophiles. So that's how you get color transfers to the Frostfeathers, Blazebulbs, and Crystalias. But to do any pattern transfers from the Extremophiles to other flowers, it has to be during one of these events. The month of May for Eggworts, Hello Kitty's Anniversary Gala for Bow Blossoms, the Lighttime Jubilee for Glow Balls, or just in the Crystal Mines, Happy Haven Days with the Hapadills. So you can always do color transfers to the Extremophiles anytime, or even pattern transfers to them anytime, but transfer from Extremophiles to event flowers only during that specific event flowers event. The Extremophile color transfers are just like any other color transfer, except you just need to use event flowers that are compatible with the biomes. For example, my Sky and White Speckled Eggwort can be used in the Crystal Caves to spawn a Sky Crystalia. Before we talk about event flowers though, I do want to talk about the limited space for flower breeding. This is where being simple is the best. Remember, all you need to breed flowers are 2 compatible flowers and spaces for new flowers to spawn in. And even just with 6 plots, that's enough. You may only be focusing on 1 goal at a time, but you can also try and get 2. I'll show you how. So this is a pretty good layout here, trying to get a hot pink Frostfeather with a hot pink and white speckled Eggwort. You could also do this and this would be fine. This is okay. And this is probably the best though. I know I'm trying to do 2 things at once, but you could also just do the Eggwort trying to get hot pink. But I'm going for the transfer of hot pink to the Frostfeather. I'm also trying to mix red and white to get a warm pink. So you can do any configuration that you want, but I'd say putting the 3 in these positions is the best. Then up in the Caldera, this is what I would say is the best layout for the configuration of these plots. But you could really just put them in any configuration. It doesn't matter too much, but I do recommend only filling up 3 of the plots out of the 6. You just need enough opportunities for something to spawn, which this gives 3 opportunities. Same kind of vibes in the Crystal Caves, where 6 plots, only doing 3, and here I'm trying to get a color transfer from the Sky and White Speckled Eggwort to the Crystalias. Now that we're done talking about all of the regional flowers, this is honestly the best transition into talking about event flowers. These include some of my favorite flowers in the game. So what are event flowers? They are special flowers that you can only get during events. All event flowers have unique default patterns, so kind of like the Extremophiles. Their default pattern isn't just an ombre. Event flowers also follow a slightly different set of rules than the other flowers in the game. The biggest one is that the event flowers can't be turned into seed packets by the seed dispenser or by troweling. Also, be careful when digging up a plant that is too young. If it isn't a seedling yet, you will lose the plant entirely. There will be an on-screen warning though, so you'll know whether or not you are safe to trowel something up. The biggest difference though is that event flowers can only spawn more of themselves during the time of their event. That means new colors or cloning themselves only happens during the event. But all is not lost. If you don't finish getting all of the colors by the time an event ends, when the event is no longer happening, you can create new spawns of event flowers inside of the greenhouse only. Outside of the greenhouse, event flowers can still develop patterns through fertilizing, and they can still transfer their colors or patterns to other flowers. So they are actually quite useful outside of their events. As long as you have at least one event flower seedling of any color, you can get all of the colors outside of the event using the greenhouse. Let's go over all of the event flowers in the game so far. I'll be telling you what event they're from, what their default colors and patterns are, and where they can be replanted. So starting up with the Marigold. This is during the Color Blaze Carnival event. The default color is orange and the default pattern is trim. It can be replanted in the Meadows, Seaside Resort, Gemstone Mountain, Mount Hothead, or the greenhouse. The Eggwort. It's available during the month of May. The default colors are white and sky, and the default pattern is speckled. It can be replanted in the Meadow, Seaside Resort, Gemstone Mountain, Mount Hothead, Spooky Swamp, Rainbow Reef, Cloud Island, Caldera, Icy Peak, Crystal Caves, and the greenhouse. The pinwheel is available during the Paper Parade. The default colors are coral, lime, and indigo. The default pattern is alternate, and it is compatible with the Meadow, Seaside Resort, Gemstone Mountain, Cloud Island, and the greenhouse. The Petunia is available during the Jam Jamboree. The default color is magenta, and the default pattern is striped. It's compatible with the Meadow, Seaside Resort, Gemstone Mountain, Spooky Swamp, and the greenhouse. The Bow Blossom is available during Hello Kitty's Anniversary Gala. The default colors are warm pink, seafoam, and lilac. The default pattern is iridescent. This is like an effect instead of like the normal pattern, so it only has one color and not two. So the compatible biomes are the Meadow, Seaside Resort, Cloud Island, Rainbow Reef, Caldera, Icy Peak, Greenhouse, and Crystal Mines. The Poinsettia is available during the Give and Gather celebration. The default colors are red and white. The default pattern is patch. The compatible biomes are Meadow, Seaside Resort, Spooky Swamp, and Greenhouse. The Glow Ball is available during the Lighttime Jubilee. The default colors are yellow, sky, and hot pink. The default pattern is glow. This is also an effect. It's compatible with the Meadow, Seaside Resort, Cloud Island, Spooky Swamp, Caldera, Icy Peak, Crystal Mines, and the greenhouse. The Rose is available during Hug and Hearts. The default colors are white, red, yellow, and pink. The default pattern is ring, and the compatible biomes are the Meadow, Seaside Resort, and greenhouse. The Hapadil is available during the Happy Haven days. The default colors are yellow and hot pink. The default pattern is confetti, and the compatible biomes are Meadows, Seaside Resort, Gemstone Mountain, Mount Hothead, Cloud Island, the greenhouse, and the Crystal Caves. Before we move on from all of the event flowers, I do just want to go a little deeper into patterned flowers. This isn't completely necessary to know, but I think it will be super helpful for you when you want to do secondary transfers or just pattern transfers. So we know that there are patterns and effect patterns. The pattern patterns will have two colors, and the effect patterns will only have one color. We've got 8 normal patterns and then 5 effect patterns. The classic patterns will all have a primary color and a secondary color. For example, this is a sky and white ombre hibiscus. The primary color is the first one listed in the name and the color that is in that little box on the flower in your inventory. So we know the primary here is sky and the secondary is white. The default secondary color is always white, except if the primary color is already white, then that default secondary color is warm pink. The primary color is what is important for color transfers and pattern transfers. So like I said, when the primary color is white, the default secondary color is always warm pink. So when you fertilize a white flower and it develops a pattern, it will automatically have white and warm pink as the primary and secondary colors. So for example, if you look here, both of these would only transfer hot pink. My first example has a hot pink and white ombre hibiscus, and that would transfer hot pink to the Bellbutton. But then in this second example, you can't actually transfer periwinkle here, since it is the secondary color. So the hot pink and periwinkle ombre hibiscus will only transfer hot pink. And of course, you can use any pattern to transfer a color, like this sky and white speckled eggwort can be used to transfer sky to this hibiscus. And remember, event flowers can always transfer colors and patterns even outside of the greenhouse. They just can't produce new spawns of themselves, but they can help, like a hibiscus, get a new spawn with a new color. Or in this example, you can use this sky iridescent bulb blossom to transfer sky. You don't need to worry about the secondary color because it does not exist for the iridescent effect. So I hope those examples help, and so far we have learned how to mix colors and transfer colors. Now we need to talk about pattern transfers. Since we all know that some flowers have different default patterns, you can actually use a very similar technique to the color transfers, but you just need to use the same color flower for breeding them. Keep in mind, not all patterns can be transferred to every type of flower. At the time of making this video, we don't know every combination of which patterns can go to which flowers, but if you are genuinely curious to see what we do know, the Hello Kitty Island Adventure Wikipedia should have a chart with all of the possible known combinations. But yeah, here are the requirements for pattern transfers. Number 1, put the patterned flower next to a different type of flower with the same primary color. Number 2, leave empty spaces around to allow new flowers to spawn. And number 3, water and fertilize every day to help the process. And don't forget to always pluck when bloomed and trowel any unwanted new spawns. But yeah, did you know pattern transfers are also extremely rare with only a 1% chance of happening? So be patient and keep trying, because they are possible. In my 2 examples here, you can see I have a teal and sky ombre hibiscus next to just a solid teal pinwheel, and I was able to transfer the primary and secondary colors to the pinwheel. But as you can see, it has the same primary color. And in the second example, I have a yellow glow ball next to a solid yellow hibiscus, and I was able to transfer the glow effect to the hibiscus. Here is another example of transferring the trim pattern to a hibiscus. This is one of my favorite pattern and flower combinations. So I have a red and white trim marigold next to a red hibiscus, and I was able to get a red and white trim hibiscus. Kind of like I said earlier, did you know that you can also transfer a pattern and it can result in transferring both the primary and secondary colors? But wait a minute. I still need to teach you how to make flowers with both unique primary and secondary colors. So let's get into what is called secondary transfers or hybrids. This is just like mixing 2 patterned flowers of the same type to get both of their primary colors to be on the flower. It's basically when a patterned flower inherits a second color from another patterned flower of the same type, instead of the default secondary color. These are called secondary transfers or hybrids. Some people in the community call them doubles, but that term is actually incorrect and a little misleading and confusing, so I will refer to them as secondary transfers or hybrids, because that is what the developers tend to do as well. So these can get super confusing and complex, but I want to keep everything easy to understand. So let's start off with the most simple type of hybrid flower. Like in my example here, all you need to do is put 2 patterned flowers of the same type near each other. Remember, type and species are like the same thing. So I have 2 Penstemums. I have a hot pink and white ombre Penstemum next to a violet and white ombre Penstemum. I put them near each other and I was able to get a hot pink and violet ombre Penstemum. Keep in mind, I could have also gotten a violet and hot pink ombre Penstemum. It is random, so if you wanted the other way around, you'll have to keep trying. Now let's look at this example. Very similar. I have a hot pink and white ombre hibiscus and a periwinkle and white ombre hibiscus. And I was lucky enough to get both combinations here. These are the 2 possibilities. You could get a hot pink and periwinkle ombre hibiscus or a periwinkle and hot pink ombre hibiscus. But yeah, same thing here. If you were to put a sky and white ombre hibiscus next to a yellow and white ombre hibiscus, you could get these 2 hybrids randomly. A sky and yellow ombre hibiscus or a yellow and sky ombre hibiscus. There is about a 1% chance for each of these spawning. But there is also a higher chance that you will just get a clone of the sky and white ombre hibiscus or a clone of the yellow and white ombre hibiscus. And there's even just a higher chance of you getting a solid sky or a solid yellow hibiscus. To switch things up a little bit, like I said earlier, you can get secondary transfers by using different patterns. So here we've got this hot pink and white ombre penstemum again, but this time I've got a violet and white speckled penstemum. This can get us clones of the originals, solid versions of them, or these two hybrids, but only these two hybrids. I'll explain. The ombre will stay with the hot pink primary color, and the speckled will stay with the violet primary color. But the primary color of the other flower will become the new secondary color. So with these, you could not get a violet and hot pink ombre. You could not get a hot pink and violet speckled. Because when you're mixing the patterns and the different colors, the pattern stays with the primary color here. But yeah, as you can see, there are so many possible combinations for hybrids, and it is impossible for me to go over every single possible combination. But in this next section where I talk about ideal layouts, I will keep adding more examples in of all 4 types of flower breeding that I've gone over in this video. But before I do that, one more secondary transfer example that I got recently. I had a mint and white trim pinwheel near an indigo and white alternate pinwheel, and I was able to get a mint and indigo trim pinwheel. What else could I have gotten? The other thing I could have gotten would have been an indigo and trim alternate pinwheel, but I'm lucky that I got this one because the trim looks really cool on the pinwheels. Before we get into layout examples, I get so many questions about what the ideal layouts are for breeding flowers. There are a million answers to this question too. I'll show you some ideas and some common ones I have seen named throughout the community, but my biggest advice is that it doesn't matter as much as you think it does. You just literally need the 2 flowers that you want to breed. You need to have them either touching each other or touching a common space, and you need to have empty spaces around them for new flowers to spawn in. If you want to see this in action, I would strongly recommend that you watch my flower speedrunning video series where I attempt to get an event flower in as few days as possible. I will also link them in the description, but specifically in the series about the pinwheels, I go over my entire process each day of digging up flowers, replanting, and everything. So if you are a little lost, it could help you to see some real in-game examples of using all of the theory and all of the information in this video. Let's move on to layouts. For the purpose of this video and aesthetics, I'm just going to be making this grid of circles that we can imagine are the plots for the flowers in the game. Okay, here are a few simple layouts that are great for the smaller patches of flowers or just an extra small space you may have left over in a bigger patch. So here my goal is to get a red penstemum. This is what I would do personally. I would just put them next to each other with no space in between. The highlighted plots are possible areas that you could get that red penstemum. There are 4 possible spots right here, and on this one, with 1 space in between, there are only 3 possible spots. Not bad, obviously, but I prefer to put them touching. My favorite thing to do, which you will see when we get into the greenhouse layouts, is just to do pairs and have the pairs be able to influence each other. Because usually when I'm trying to breed flowers, I'm trying to go for quantity, you know? So if I strategically put everything to be compatible with each other and put them in a pair grid sort of thing, that's my favorite thing to do. So here's an example. Will this work? I'll give you a second to think about it. Will this work? Nope, because they aren't touching any spaces in common. Will this one work? Yes, but not well. Only 1 possible space for a red penstemum. Now, this looks a little intense. This is the infamous merry-go-round you have probably heard of. I used to swear by it, but now I'm not so much of a fan since you have to put a lot of flowers down and it just consumes a lot of plots, and the flowers on the outer layer might actually hinder you more than actually help you. Because planting too many flowers close together can hurt your chances of getting rare breeds and such. More plants means fewer empty spots for new spawns, and more potential outcomes make specific flowers harder to target. in this exact setup I made, this has to be inside the greenhouse due to multiple event flowers being placed down, but I don't really recommend using the merry-go-round in the greenhouse, so this example isn't 100% good, but it's just an example to show you. I'm trying to transfer the glow pattern to all of these yellow flowers. So I'm using the same kind of theory we had earlier, where to transfer a pattern, you need the same color. And you just put one in the middle, one free space all around, and then an outer layer of flowers around that. It does take up so much space though. So here are some scenarios and tips I would suggest for the merry-go-round. So transferring event patterns or colors outside of the event time. This is good because the out of event flower won't be able to duplicate itself, but the pattern is still transferable. Or another example is if you only have one seed or seedling of a specific flower and want to use it to breed with. And my biggest tip for success with the merry-go-round is that the outer flowers should not be able to breed with each other, unless that's what you're intending, but I feel like that kind of defeats the purpose of the merry-go-round and you should just use a line. For this example, I specifically thought, what could you possibly use a merry-go-round for? Imagine you just unlocked a hibiscus, and you finally got your first hot pink and white ombre hibiscus. Now would be a great time to run on over to the Meadows and do a merry-go-round, since you only have one of these hibiscuses, and you can finally start transferring hot pink to the rest of your flowers, right? Wouldn't that be awesome? But yeah, so that's like one scenario that I could think of this being really good for. And as you can see, all of the outer flowers I have strategically placed so they won't breed with each other and interfere with our process. But you'll probably get cloned flowers regardless, which is kind of a bummer of this. But yeah, let's move on to a linear layout. These can obviously be used in many different shaped and sized patches of flowers, and all you need are flowers that are compatible with each other. These are great to use outside of the greenhouse, since I would still recommend doing pairs inside of the greenhouse, since you will have one extra space between each little pair instead of just a straight line. Anyways, here I just have a line or chain of flowers where I am trying to transfer red to these Bellbuttons and Penstemums. You can either do it like this, with red being like every other flower, or you could have it be every 2 flowers. If you are doing these alongside other lines of flowers that you want to breed, make sure to either have them be unbreedable with the first line, and you can plant them with only one space between each one, or if you don't want them to interfere, you should plant them with 2 whole empty lines in between them so they don't influence each other. But if you want them to influence each other, obviously, you could set it up like this. Here I'm trying to get a secondary transfer with all of these patterned hibiscus. Since they are all compatible with each other, it is actually beneficial for them to only be one line apart, since the top line can potentially create a secondary transfer with the bottom line. These are a couple of examples of possible spawns you could get from doing this. I like to do this when I just don't really care about the outcome, and I just want to be surprised by something, especially for hybrids. But yeah, this isn't the best way to do it if you're trying to mix colors or specifically do a transfer. You'd have to put much more thought into the placement of all of the flowers and colors to make sure the mixable ones are, compatible. But for hybrids, I really like this. So another question I get a lot is how to lay out my flowers inside of the greenhouse. So there are some ideal ways to organize the flowers for each upgrade level. So let's go over the optimal ways. When you just open the greenhouse, it is just like a 2x3 little grid. Just put a pair smack dab in the middle. For the first upgrade, we have a little 3x4 grid. You could just do a straight up line in the middle, or you could just do a pair and then an extra one down there. So you have one extra space for a new spawn to come in. But moving on to the second upgrade, I'm going to be categorizing these into either a layout if you want the pairs to influence each other, or a layout where you don't want them to influence each other. So for example, here I'm just trying the same old thing. So I'm flipping each pair as we go across, so there are more opportunities to transfer red onto that Penstemum here. But yeah, this is the layout if you don't want them to influence each other. So having pairs, but just putting them 2 lines apart. So the green and white will not affect the Tulia and then the sky Penstemum. For the third upgrade, use this layout if you want the pairs to influence each other. This is my go-to. And then use this layout if you don't want them to influence each other, with obviously 2 lines in between each pair that you don't want to possibly breed with each other. Now for the fourth upgrade, same thing, just flip the pairs every time. And then using this layout if you don't want them to influence each other. This time it's doing like a 2, 3, 2 is the most efficient, I'd say. And then having 2 empty lines in between each column. And then for the full upgrade, this is my favorite layout. It's just like these smaller ones. And yeah, use this if you want the pairs to influence each other. But if you don't want them to influence each other, you can separate the pairs by 2 plots each. I hope that gives you enough examples on how to lay out all of your flowers. But yes, let me know if you have any questions. I put so much work into this video. So if you appreciate it, please like the video, subscribe, and if you have the means, it would mean a lot to me if you became a member. You get some awesome perks, and I'm going to be adding some exclusive member videos soon too, so keep your eyes peeled for those. But yeah, I just want to reiterate the basics of breeding flowers. So TLDR, plant 2 compatible flowers near each other with a maximum of 1 space between them. Leave empty plots for new flowers to grow, since new colors or pattern transfers only happen in new spawns. Water and fertilize every day, and always pluck bloomed flowers and trowel unwanted new spawns. Wow, okay, so with that is the updated Ultimate Flower Guide. If you made it this far into the video, honestly, thank you so much for watching. It really means a lot to me. I still can't believe how much love my first one got. I'm just so happy to have made an updated version with all of the new info that we've gotten throughout the past year. So yeah, just thank you so much for watching. Please like the video and don't forget about the little cheat sheets you can download on my Ko-fi. If this was helpful, consider maybe becoming a member, and thank you so much again. I will see you in the next video. Comment below if you have any questions about anything I said in this video. So yeah, one last thank you, and I will see you in the next one. Bye!